Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today on green meetings and how they happen in green destinations. And we are so excited today to not only have a tremendous panelist, but a great sponsor as well. So first of all, I'd like to just do some introductions and a little bit of housekeeping. You will be able to enter your questions that you have during the webinar for our panelist, Amanda, through your chat board or your question box. So we look forward to getting some great questions to take at the end of the webinar. And I'd like to also welcome ePro Meetings app powered by ePro Direct, our sponsor. And Chauncey Keller is with us today and will be speaking with us at the end of the webinar. But before we get started, I would just really like to welcome Amanda Simons, the Sustainable Program Manager with Greenview, as our guest panelist today. And Amanda has such a great, sexy webinar. Or such a great, sexy resume for our webinar. There you go, Amanda. But you really come to Greenview with over 10 years of experience in both the hospitality and the global tourism industry. And you worked extensively in France and also throughout the U.S., specializing in sustainable business operations for not only tour operators but hotels and in the meetings and events industry. And I think that this is a really interesting background that you have. You've worked to grow our industry to help adopt sustainability through business development and also creating and executing really innovative sustainability education programs for meeting and event professionals. And I know at Greenview your primary role is to continue to develop and implement corporate responsibility and sustainability programs for your clients, organizations, and events. And you have a master's degree in environmental management and a graduate certificate in sustainability from Portland State University, and also a bachelor's degree in economics from Sonoma State. So clearly we're going to rely on you to be our subject matter expert today. And Amanda, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Terry.
So our topics today, and for all of those who registered, I am assuming hold a great deal of interest in really learning what your meeting footprint looks like. What do you leave behind in the destination after you've held a meeting? And I know as a planner who's responsible for impacting a destination with a large group of people, you may be interested to learn from Amanda how you can actually contribute to a healthier destination by instituting a sustainable meetings program or policy if your organization doesn't have one, or if you're interested in kind of beefing up what you already have. And there are, in fact, a myriad of indicators that help planners and event organizers identify how sustainable or how green a destination is, and that's what Amanda will be covering with us today. So we're going to first look at kind of a high view, assessing accessibility infrastructure in the destination. Then we're going to go down to a more granular view of really looking at the event areas, the city, the convention center, even the hotel that you'll be using. And then Amanda is going to give us a set of best practices. And through her generous contributions, we're going to be sending you, after the webinar, some really cool resources, a nice article that Amanda has written for us, as well as a glossary of terms. So to begin with, we hope that you will additionally realize that sustainability isn't really confined to the walls of your hotel or even your convention center. And you'll want to consider the destination at large. And we hope that after today's webinar that you will consider directing those questions to your destination professionals at the convention and visitors bureaus and the hotels that you are in contact with. So to get us started, Amanda, I'd like to tee you up with saying, where would a planner begin to assess the overall, or kind of, like I said, the macro or the high-level sustainability of a destination? What are some factors that they should be looking at in the very beginning?
Thanks, Terry, and thank you for that great introduction. So really looking at the accessibility and infrastructure means kind of looking at the built environment and how it ultimately hinders or supports the overall sustainability of the event. So at a macro level, empowerMINT already has a lot of these indicators built in, which is fantastic, such as distance from the convention center to the airport. Obviously, the closer the better. Kind of the number of hotel rooms within a mile of the convention center. So that's really going to support the walkability of the conference, reduce the need for shuttles or other transportation, and will help cut down on the overall carbon footprint of the event. Some really cool examples of cities that have this are Montreal has a tunnel system actually underneath the city because it's so cold there. It's great. So you can access the convention center, different hotels, shopping, all kinds of things to help you maneuver the city by walking. Another great indicator is going to be how the city has effective public transportation from the airport to the convention center. So cities like San Francisco have the BART system, which runs from SFO to Market and Powell right outside Moscone Center. Boston has a free line from the airport to the convention center, and Portland, Oregon also has a bunch of stops at the convention center as well as hotels along that route. And even if the city you're considering doesn't have great public transportation from the airport to the downtown area, it's really important to kind of look at what the transportation infrastructure within the city is. So if they have hybrid bus fleets or alternative hybrid taxi shuttles. Also tourist shuttles are great. Orlando has a thing called the iRide Trolley, which services thousands of hotel rooms along about an 8-mile strip of International Drive from the convention center. And so it's a hop-on, hop-off. People can very easily get to the convention center as well as their hotels and other activities within that destination.
I mean, it's interesting that so many cities are starting to put this sort of public transportation as it, connects hotels and centers and pieces together.
Oh, it's a really integral part of really reducing the impact and also just like moving people around easier. So it's really going to help planners and really to make their events more accessible and easier to maneuver. And lastly, I have on here just percentage of local and accessible green space. So that's just, it's a great place for attendees to kind of decompress, get some fresh air, and get a feel for the city a little bit. And Moscone Center has the Yerba Buena Gardens just right on top, basically, of the Moscone Center. And I was just in Dallas last week, and they had a great, beautiful park just maybe a half a block from the entrance of the convention center, which was fantastic. So, and also just looking at kind of an advanced indicator is asking, as a planner, asking your convention center, your CVD or DMO, if they have a green team or sustainability director who you can access, who's really knowledgeable about the practices within the city. Because this is key, considering that, we planners rely on the CVDs to really have that in-depth knowledge of the city. And a really unique example of this that I just wanted to call out was is happening in Orlando. They have a group called Green Destination Orlando, and it's a group made up of sustainability representatives from the CVB, the convention center, different hotels, the airport, people from the city government, restaurants, and other city vendors that really serve as a forum for collaborating and about sustainability and problem solving around tourism and in the meetings and events space. And because of this really interesting collaboration, it means that the contacts at the CPB there, as well as the convention center, have a really holistic view and understanding of what's happening from the perspective of sustainability within development within the city. And so for planners that are kind of looking to book events, sometimes it's years in advance, this knowledge of what's coming in regards to sustainability can really enhance your destination and what you have to offer. So that's a great thing to have, is a green contact or sustainability contact.
And Amanda, I would point out that even if a DMO or a convention center doesn't have a green team or a sustainability director on staff, they would still be able to point you to the right resources within the destination to get that information.
Absolutely, and honestly, many times there isn't somebody that has that coined title. Just as long as there's someone that can point you in the right direction and get you some of that information that they need, that's fantastic.
Perfect.
Oops.
There we go. You're good, Amanda.
Thanks, Terry. So this is kind of looking now at the kind of micro initiatives, or kind of really digging down into the nuts and bolts of what's going to help support a sustainable event. And so looking to see, or asking your CBB contacts if the city has a sustainability or climate action plan in place. And more cities are doing this. Orlando, Philadelphia, Chicago. And you may kind of be wondering what that has to do with kind of your specific event, but what it really means is that the city that you're going to host your event in is looking at sustainability and thinking about it and actively kind of trying to work to create the services and that infrastructure to support greener meetings. Another initiative to kind of look at, or a thing to call out, is looking at what the hotels are doing. So percentage of kind of hotels within that convention package that have a third-party certification around sustainability, so things like LEED, TripAdvisor, Green Leaders, Green Key, Apex ASTM. And that's just kind of going to tell you about how that these hotels, at the very least, are taking the very basic steps towards sustainability, you know, energy efficiency, those kind of things. And for citywide events, obviously the convention center is home. So some of the things to consider as a planner, which will kind of help you identify if the center is going to be a strong sustainability partner, is really basic. Like, does the center have an ongoing recycling program that, you know, includes at the very least, you know, plastics, glass, aluminum, and such? And also, can the center provide you a post-event sustainability report, you know, including energy, water consumption? And most centers honestly can do this. They're tracking it. They need to know this stuff for their own records. And this is really going to help planners who want to start looking at sustainability metrics and working to improve those.
And Amanda, if they wanted a report like that, is that something that they would need to ask before the meeting, that they're going to want to access that kind of information?
Most definitely. I think the more you can do pre-planning, honestly, the more effective you'll be with your sustainability initiative. So just asking ahead of time that you're gonna want that information will help them prepare it in such a way that you can actually digest and utilize that information really well. Some other metrics to kind of look at are: does the convention center have an ongoing food or waste diversion program? And we call this one out because more food reaches landfills than any other kind of municipal solid waste. In 2012, 36 million tons of waste was generated, food waste was generated in the U.S. And you may be thinking, well, food just kind of breaks down. It's not that big of a deal, which it does break down, but it does turn into methane gas, which is 21 times more potent than carbon. So responsible kind of composting of this material is really important. And a great example of this is Oregon Convention Center. They have a long-standing plan of composting back of house for events, as well as front of house at their concessions.
And Amanda, I think I would point out here too that even meetings that don't access a convention center, might not be large enough to use convention center space. I know a lot of hotels that are starting to get involved in waste programs, even individual freestanding restaurants that are starting to get involved in ways to, you know, make food waste or food offerings even to community programs.
Most definitely. I think, honestly, more hotels are probably taking this route because it's really easy to do so in the kitchens. You know, and it gets harder and harder as the event gets bigger and bigger. So, yeah, definitely looking at what hotels are doing there is really important. And then also looking at kind of the percentage of energy that's going to be generated from renewable sources. So, for example, the Salt Palace in Salt Lake, they get 11% of their energy from solar panels on their roof. And San Francisco gets actually 100% of its energy from renewable sources off-site, which is hydro. And actually a lot of hotels are starting to do this as well. And the reason that this is kind of important is just because the convention center is probably one of the largest buildings in the city and one of the biggest consumers of energy for a destination. So if you're looking at centers and hotels that are really trying to address this issue, it means that overall probably the city is looking for more sustainable operations and can really support the sustainability of your event.
Makes perfect sense. So what about those advanced indicators?
Sure. So here's some a little bit more advanced indicators, and these are things where you can go above and beyond really. And this is kind of where centers or hotels are starting to track their food by total spend of what's considered local. And so there isn't actually a definition making this even harder to do, but it kind of ranges between 100 and 250 miles. And for an event, you probably wouldn't get that information by spend. Obviously, that's kind of a sensitive area around sharing costs. But you can do it by weight, which is great. San Diego Convention Center, they have an ongoing purchasing agreement with farmers within 100 miles of San Diego to source everything from like beef, cheese, fruit, seafood, produce. And obviously San Diego is really lucky in where they're located. There's tons of agriculture around. But even in other cities that may have that challenge, we're finding more and more that cities are addressing this. In fact, we were just in Dallas, and we put on an event, and 65% of the food by weight was sourced locally for that particular event, which was a great win.
That's really cool, Amanda. So would that be relatable? I know I hear a lot of hotels and restaurants using this phrase, farm to fork.
Yes.
So that would be talking about locally generating food sources. Is that correct?
That's exactly correct. So farmers that are within 100 to 250 miles and that you can source that from, exactly. And there's lots of restaurants now that are doing that as well.
It's become a very popular restaurant initiative. In many cities, I see the whole farm to fork or farm to table initiatives happening.
And for planners, this is a really cool thing to try and incorporate in your meetings, because not only does it support the local economy, but it really helps to bring kind of like that local flavor of that destination into the event. Sometimes we get stuck in the convention center and we can't get out, and this is a really cool way to do that, to see that there's this great community out there when you get to that destination.
Very cool.
And lastly, I'll just say renewable energy credits, and I won't bore you with all the technical crazy of what this is, but really it just shows that if a center or cities are purchasing renewable energy credits, they're choosing to basically directly spend their money on local alternative energy projects and supporting those. So that's really going extra mile.
All right, Amanda, so now kind of for the third level is how do planners bring this down to an individual level, for participants or attendees to get involved, and how is social responsibility kind of part of that for planners who aim to leave the destination just a little bit better than they found it?
Sure. So when we talk about green meetings, we really are talking about responsible meetings. So it's not just the eco, it's also what's happening socially. And so supporting that community in which you're having the meeting. And so asking the question as a planner, does the CVB or convention center have a ready list of local organizations where items can be donated for reuse? So examples of this can include leftover food donation to local charities and shelters, banners and signage for reuse. Las Vegas does a fantastic job of this. I've seen them reuse those huge banners to create sun shelters at public playgrounds and at schools.
Wow.
Yeah, really innovative use of materials.
And considering that I was sitting at a public playground yesterday in the sun thinking, wouldn't it be nice to have a big tarp over here?
Exactly,
That's a great suggestion. That's very cool, Amanda.
And another thing is how you can donate exhibit materials, such as wood or metal, to local building projects. So Habitat for Humanity, outreaching to that. And also contacting schools and theater departments and high schools. They can use a lot of this stuff for props, and it's an offsetting the cost that the school would otherwise have to purchase. So that's a really cool way to donate.
Wonderful.
Yeah, because one of the best examples I've actually seen of this is, again, at San Diego. They have a list of organizations that you can donate items to on their website. They also have a specific contact in the convention services. And then the cool part is they even have examples of items that have been donated in the past. So as a planner, you can kind of get the idea of what things have been donated, and so that for your show, you can kind of already think in your mind, okay, this could go here, this could go there, that could go there. And then I think just also kind of looking at your hotels and seeing which hotels maybe participate in a donation program, maybe a formal soap or amenity donation. They're really going the extra mile to remove soaps and amenities from the waste stream, and also helping people in need in the U.S. as well as abroad. And just some final advanced indicators around social sustainability. You know, looking to see if the CVB or the convention center or the hotel maybe is potentially tracking. Basically, an employee engagement score, which is just kind of a way to measure employee engagement and employee retention, and also just kind of supportive workplaces and social programs in place at those organizations that kind of support employees. I'm sure there's so many examples of this out there, but the DoubleTree in Portland has a fantastic program. They have a food pantry for employees that may need it, and they really work to have a strong retention and create a family environment there. So Terry, I know I covered a lot in a short amount of time, so I'm not sure if you want to pop over to the glossary or.
Yeah, and I think that you did, I mean, we hit the 3 levels, you know, the more global level, the more venue or event level, and then really making it personalized for your attendees. And Amanda wrote a terrific article for us for this webinar, and for those of you who attend, we will be sending you Amanda's article that kind of reiterates many of her points, as well as a glossary of terms for sustainability that I think you'll all find very useful. So we'll be sending you that along with your CMP credit next week. Amanda did such a great job for us of pointing out how that CVB destination professional can kind of help you green up your meeting. And, you know, we want to reiterate that, you know, when you start to think about, and Amanda, I don't know if, you know, you get this question a lot, but it's like, oh man, I have so much to do, I can't now put all this on my plate. And it doesn't really have to go on your plate. It needs to be resourced and sourced through contacts that can help you in the destination. And the CVB can make that easier for you, connecting you to the right resources, and also continuing to give you updates on improvements and plans for sustainability, especially if you're booking a future year's meeting or conference, keeping you up to date in what the specific destinations plans are down the road. And Amanda was kind enough to point out at the beginning of her conversation that empowerMINT.com, which is DMAI's resource for planners, does give you much of that information as far as, you know, how many hotels are within a mile of the airport, or within a mile of the convention center, or how far is the airport from the convention center or the downtown area. So we hope that you will seek out information there, as well as get in contact with your destination professional who can really help you right from the beginning find the right fit for any size of meeting or event that you're looking for, and help you, as Amanda said. We hear so much, Amanda, that attendees especially, they don't just want to attend a meeting. They really want to experience a destination. And many of these local projects, foods, events that you talked about are a great way to infuse a meeting with a lot of local experience. And CVB is a great connector there for you. I want to remind everyone that having an opportunity to kind of hear Amanda educate us about greener meetings qualifies you for a half an hour of CMP credit under Domain G, Meeting and Event Design, and we'll be sending that to you next week. And we'd love for you to keep in touch, and I've given you some options there. But now I'd like to turn to Christine Shimasaki, or Shimo, from DMAI, who's been kind of monitoring our question board, looking for specific questions that may have come in for Amanda as she's been covering her material. Hey, Shimo.
Thank you. thank you, Terry, and excellent presentation, Amanda. I'm going to combine a couple of questions that we've been receiving, and one is from on the CVB side, where many of our destinations do have green initiatives, and they're trying to figure out, well, how do I get the word out? What kind of message can I send out to let planners know? And then we have planners who have sort of chimed in to ask the question, well, where can I find and learn about those cities that do have those offerings? So there seems to be, Amanda, sort of a disconnect about, well, how can and what should we create for planners as an industry?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. I think we find that a lot, that there is a little bit of a gap between, knowing what all these centers are doing and where planners can best find that information. So I think as a CVB and a destination, just creating a list of your practices and what you're doing and having a section about green meetings on your website will really help to spread the word, and to maybe even include that in your press kits of what you can do, what's happening locally, and how you service your community in that fashion is a great way to get that out there. And then I think for planners, where they can find that information, at least that way it'll become a little bit more publicly accessible if it's on the website. Maybe empowerMINT can start incorporating some more indicators into their list, so that it's easy for planners to find some of those really basic information. And then there's some other publications out there, or organizations that kind of report on this. The Green Meeting Industry Council has information and resources. They have a list of kind of sustainable destinations that you can look through. Let's see what else. There's a few other some publications. Green Biz magazine, as well as Green Lodging News, also kind of report on what's happening in different areas, but it's not really specific to different cities. So those are kind of specific on what's happening in hotels and sustainability business in general.
And we have, thank you, excellent. And you mentioned that maybe empowerMINT should consider sort of collecting this different green initiatives from the destinations, so that it's kind of easier to be found and maybe put in a consistent format for planners. I think that's a great idea. And recognizing that this is sort of an evolution, right, that we've sort of entered into. And I think that as we get more mature in collecting this type of information for planners, we can make it more accessible. We have another question that was more specific, and she wanted to understand, what was the website that you mentioned that gives ideas for things that can be donated after a meeting?
Oh, sure. So the San Diego Convention and Visitors Bureau, as well as the San Diego Convention Center, if you look up in their green meetings, they have a green meeings section on their website. So it provides a great example to look at, that they are where they have the list of what you could donate and examples of what had been donated.
And I think in any city you could also ask for that kind of information.
Definitely.
What items do you regularly donate, and through what cities? I love your idea, and I've never really thought about it, but I love your idea of reaching out to schools and theater programs. It's just such a really good one.
And those are ideas for our CVBs to sort of put that kind of information on their own websites.
Exactly. I will say that this is all just looking at potentially what other cities are doing and how you can incorporate this into your websites or your communication materials. Because like we said, or like the question that came in, how do you best communicate what you're already doing? And I think that's a challenge that's out there, but that people are being very creative, and different cities are being very creative in how they're addressing that.
And one of our planners have mentioned, that's on the call today, that another idea to keep it green is to consult the local county recycling coordinators in the county. which is where you're hosting your event. Another question here is coming, and you'll appreciate this, Amanda, coming from one of our planners who is sort of overwhelmed about where to really begin. And so, what do you suggest as a starting point?
Sure. So I think it's a lot to tackle and a lot to take on. And along with the information that the DMAI is going to send out for you joining this, we created a kind of specific, almost a checklist. I kind of hate to use that word, but it just kind of outlines different destination indicators to look at. And so I think really the first place to start is maybe to look at those indicators and then ask your CBD and just see, what they're doing, what they can potentially help you with. And I think just do the big picture things, like can you look at waste and how maybe you can recycle more or divert more or include composting into your event, how you can donate a lot of the materials that potentially are left over. Just kind of look at the big picture things that you can look at, what hotels that you can partner with maybe that are part of, like we said, a third-party green certification. That's really going to start to cut down on the impacts of your event. But we understand that it's definitely overwhelming to start. And I think just take baby steps and realize that sustainability is a journey. It's not a destination. And so every little bit that you can do, set manageable goals for yourself around these things. And really pat yourself on the back as a planner and as a destination that you're trying to incorporate this into your day-to-day operations.
And I think that some of the comments where I'm looking at now, really have some suggestions that, the CVB are going to be currently at different levels of incorporating this about their destinations and communicating it. Some might be more along the continuum than others. But it would be very helpful if the CVBs really had the contact names of the sustainability champion from those facilities at the very least. And so you can see that it's important for the CVBs to begin to aggregate all of this kinds of contacts, local resources, whether it's the county recycling coordinators of the county, just sort of contacting and coordinating all of those contacts within the destination.
Most definitely.
Well, I think that is, Terry, the bulk of our great questions that we had for today.
So I'd like to, before we close, ask Chauncey from eProDirect to say hello and see if she has any closing comments for us as our sponsor before we say goodbye.
Okay.
Hey, Chauncey.
Hey, thank you so much. Man, Amanda, this was awesome stuff. And I'm not necessarily a meeting planner, but that was great. And I loved, we touched on this, the education and the local drama department. And one thing is just start somewhere, and I think that this is some great beginning points because it can be overwhelming not knowing where to go. But we at eProDirect, we are a hospitality marketing company on one side and work with hoteliers and CVBs, and on the other side we work with meeting planners and have some great event apps. And I'm very excited to announce we just rolled out a brand new product for associations, and it's free, and it goes right along with your green and keeping everything sustainable. We are offering national associations a free mobile membership platform app. And so it basically has all of your desired association content, and it serves as a portal for individual chapter directories and events guides. And you only have to have a couple of your chapters to use this for it to remain free. And so we are very excited to roll that out. It's called 7 Circles. And so it goes right, like I said, along in line with getting rid of the big old fat paper directories, et cetera. So eProDirect.com/7Circles, or just eProDirect.com, and you can see the announcement for 7 Circles. And if anybody wants additional information, I can send that over. So thank you for the opportunity to partner with DMAI. It's such a great, strong partnership. And again, Amanda, kudos to you and your team. Job very, very well done.
Thanks, Chauncey. I will just add that, a great sustainability element to think about is utilizing for planners using event apps, because you eliminate all this paper waste that you don't need, and they're really fun and interactive. So it's great that you guys are providing those things as well.
Terry, can I get one more question in that came in a little later?
Sure, we got Amanda on the payroll here. She's not going anywhere.
Okay. One of our planners said that they've been approached by a firm that wants to provide them, some baseline audits on their event and to determine really kind of the gap of where they are and full compliance with ISO 20121 event sustainability standards. Can you speak to sort of if this is a major cost, or is this major cost worth it, and can you speak to that particular standard?
Sure. So ISO 2012-1 is a mouthful to say for sure, and it kind of looks at the general overall management of an event in an organization. So they're going to look at all kinds of things about stakeholder engagement, how you're talking with everyone, and making sure that you're really trying to utilize best practice there in the realm of sustainability. So ISO 2012-1 as well as some other ISO standards are a really great way to really enhance the sustainability of your event. It doesn't go into very prescriptive detail as far as what exactly you should do. Again, it's kind of a management plan. How do you set goals? How do you achieve those goals? But it definitely will, like I said, enhance sustainability. It's a trade-off. I mean, I think if you really are interested into moving forward with sustainability and you have the financial backing to do it, having somebody that has the background and the understanding of how these certifications and these management systems work is going to take a lot of the work off of you as a planner and your planning team, and they can really guide you because they really understand and they know the right questions to ask. And they can also look at your event and say, okay, what makes sense for your audience? What makes sense for you as an organization? How do we tell that story well? So I think it's just kind of going internally and seeing how important that is and biting it off in chunks. I think taking steps, I love it when people want to jump in with 2 feet, and that's fantastic because you need the support, but also just being understanding how much you can handle, with your busy schedules and whatnot around sustainability. So hopefully that answered your question.
And I think what I've seen is varying levels. Like some corporations might have certain reporting requirements because they're publicly held and need to report at certain levels, especially when it comes to sustainability, versus maybe that is not so onerous for some of the associations. But it just kind of depends on what your stakeholder audience is and kind of talking to them about what it is you want to accomplish.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, Shima, is that it's really about your stakeholders and your audience and your attendees. More and more sustainability is seen as a brand value, and being transparent about what you're doing, and really, telling and celebrating all your achievements around that. And so I think just, really understanding what's important to your stakeholders and what's important to you as an organization around sustainability should help, you answer that question on what scale you want to go with implementing sustainability.
Okay, Amanda, I promise this is the last question.
No, you can keep it going. It's great.
The question is really which convention centers do you think are at the forefront of sustainability in the U.S. or overseas? And, while we don't like to kind of do the top 5 or 10, you might want to just kind of share some of the work Greenview has done in surveying convention centers, and I think you'll be publishing that report fairly soon.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll be publishing a report called the Green Venue Survey, Green Venue Study, that kind of we surveyed a bunch of different convention centers. It was all volunteer about their, a lot of questions around what they're doing and how they're tracking their waste and their energy and food sourcing and everything like that. I think you'd be surprised to note that there's a lot of centers out there that are doing a lot of things, and they're not necessarily touting it as sustainability, but more and more centers are tracking in energy and sourcing that from renewable sources. Like I mentioned already, San Francisco or Moscone Center, they're getting 100% of their power from renewable sources. Let's see. I think some of the centers that are doing really interesting work are the Orange County Convention Center. You know, they're really working as a huge venue to really reduce their impacts on their trying to incorporate solar. They have a great recycling and composting system in place. And the whole city there, like I said, is really trying to support that effort. Some other cities internationally, Denmark and Copenhagen, obviously, you know, that's just kind of ingrained in their nature to go that route. Toronto Convention Center has done a lot of great work. And some of the work that we've done, you know, with our clients, Green Build is one of our clients, and when they go to a center, you know, they demand quite a lot more than anyone I've ever seen around sustainability. And what it really does is it helps the centers kind of look at their whole picture, look at everything that they're doing in their operations and how they can adjust and change in a meaningful and long-term way. So they were just recently in Philadelphia, and the convention center there went from, I'm not sure of the exact diversion rate for recyclables, but they went from a very low number to about 76% diversion, which is incredible. That's an incredible number. And so for them to be able to do that in a year's time is really, really great, and it speaks to the fact that it doesn't really, the centers that are doing that really support a sustainable event. But if you are going to a city and you're dedicated and want to do sustainability and incorporate greening into your event, any center does have the ability to support that.
Well, Amanda, you've been just such a great resource, and when Greenview does publish the Green Venues survey study results, we'll be sure to distribute that within, if you follow us, and our newsletter Insights. So we'll be sharing that with you through our follow-up communications.
Great. Thank you, Shima.
Well, thanks, everyone. I can tell, first of all, by the number of planners who ask very specific questions, the number who have stayed on line through almost 15 minutes of Q&A, how interesting this subject was, and what a great job Amanda did of covering it for us today. So, again, our thanks to ePro Direct and Chauncey Keller. Specifically to Amanda with Greenview, we really thank you. And to all the planners that are starting to really follow us regularly on our monthly webinars, we want to say thank you, and please come back and look for our ongoing webinar promo invites. We're always in this third Thursday slot in the 1:30 Eastern time frame, so you can rely on that. And we look forward to welcoming you for future webinars and more great topics. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.